When humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council, they were met with skepticism. A species from a death world, a place classified as too dangerous for intelligent life to evolve, was an anomaly in itself. But what truly stunned the Council was how these so-called Deathworlders had not just survived their brutal home but had conquered their own apex predators. Silence filled the Council chamber as a human representative casually mentioned it in passing. A Zelnari diplomat, a species that had ruled its world unchallenged for eons, leaned forward. "You did what?" The human shrugged. "We hunted them. Tamed some. Drove others to extinction." Murmurs erupted among the delegates. The very idea was absurd. For most sentient species, predators were an existential threat, something to be feared, avoided, outlived. No civilized race fought their own predators and won. A reptilian Gravani delegate scoffed. "Nonsense. Predators dominate their ecosystems. That is nature's design." The human only smiled. "Not on Earth." To the Council, the concept was unthinkable. Their own evolutionary paths had been far less violent. Sentience had only arisen once the great threats of their worlds had faded. But humans? They had clawed their way to dominance, not by waiting for nature to favor them, but by bending it to their will. An Avri scientist, struggling to grasp the implications, addressed the human. "You are telling us that instead of waiting for your predators to go extinct, you actively fought them? Even after achieving civilization?" The human nodded. "Of course. We weren't content with just surviving. We ensured nothing could threaten us again. This was more than just an evolutionary quirk. It was a declaration of intent. Humanity had not simply adapted to its environment, it had subjugated it." A nervous delegate whispered, "If they could do that to their own world, what else are they capable of?" The chamber grew quiet. For the first time, the Council saw humans not as newcomers, not as primitive Deathworlders, but as something else entirely. Something terrifying. "Prove it," the Gravani finally said. "Tell us how your kind conquered their predators." The human leaned forward. "Where do I begin? Earth was never a paradise. It was a battlefield where only the ruthless survived. Long before humans ruled, the land belonged to giants, saber-toothed cats with teeth like daggers, wolves that hunted in massive packs, and bears that towered over any living creature. Even the skies weren't safe, with raptors large enough to snatch a human child from the ground. For most species, intelligence came as a luxury. For humans, it was a necessity. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the strongest. Alone, they were prey. But they refused to stay that way. Fire was their first weapon. No claws, no fangs, just a spark that turned night into day and sent even the fiercest beasts running. What other creatures feared, humans controlled. They didn't just use fire to keep predators at bay, they wielded it, shaped it, carried it into the dark places where monsters lurked. But fire alone wasn't enough. They needed more. They studied their enemies, learned their patterns, tracked their movements. Unlike the beasts that relied on instinct, humans remembered. They shared knowledge, passed it down, refined it. Then came weapons. The sharpened stone, the carved spear, the weighted net. Where other species relied on brute force, humans calculated. They worked together, planned ambushes, drove their enemies into traps. A lone human was weak. A pack of them, unstoppable. And then, they did the unthinkable. They took the enemy's strength and made it their own. Wolves, once feared hunters, were lured in with scraps, then trained, then bred. Within generations, they were no longer just predators. They were allies. What other species fled from, humans tamed. The Council listened in stunned silence. No species had ever domesticated a predator. It was unthinkable, a violation of the natural order. A Zelnari scholar spoke, disbelief in their voice. "You mean to say you took a creature that hunted you, and made it serve you?" The human nodded. "We didn't just do it once. We did it to all of them. They had taken wild cattle and turned them into livestock, falcons into weapons, elephants into war machines. One by one, they bent the predators of Earth to their will." The Avri scientist shook their head. "And the ones you couldn't tame?" The human's expression darkened. We wiped them out. A chilling realization swept through the chamber. Humans had not merely survived their world. They had conquered it. The Gravani, who had once mocked them, now sat in stunned silence. By the stars, what kind of creatures are you? The humans simply smiled. The kind that never stays prey.